This episode is brought to you by Progressive.
Are you driving your car or doing the laundry right now? Podcasts go best when they're bundled with another activity, like Progressive home and auto policies. They're best when bundled too.
Having these two policies together makes insurance easier and could help you save. Customers who save by switching their home and car insurance to Progressive save over $775 on average.
Quote a home and car bundle today at progressive.com.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $779 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2022 and May 2023. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states.
So we are live here in Seattle at the SP Fest Seattle and Washington State Convention Center, and Chris and I are on this interzone with some nice special guests. We've got Dan Holme and Liz Sundet. Dan, first, give us a sense of who you are, what brought you here.
Hey, Mark. I'm lucky enough to work with you two every day.
Hey.
I'm on the SharePoint team. I also am responsible for Yammer and Microsoft Stream.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to see you. Where have you been?
And Liz, you're not
Don't
too
tell
much...
my boss. I'm at a conference.
Liz, you're not too much of a stranger either.
No, not at all. I've been doing SharePoint Fest for probably the last 4 years or so. So happy to be here again.
Very nice. So just to set the stage a little bit, we obviously are in the expo hall. I can see within throwing distance, we've got coffee, we've got iced tea, we've got chocolate-covered strawberries. All that's good, but what's better is homemade chocolate goodies from Liz herself.
Wow,
So for your
that's
listeners,
This is great.
you're going to hear us taste test for the first time some fresh chocolate what?
Chocolate and peanut butter or coconut and chocolate.
All
So-
right.
That's good.
To
Let's
take
try
one of
this.
each.
Liz, would you like one of your own?
No, I'm
Okay.
good.
So count of three, guys. Here we
cheers.
go. Liz? Oh.
I got peanut butter.
Ooh, I got the coconut.
Rock peanut butter.
Thank you, Liz.
I feel like
Thank
the share.
you.
Nobody can talk because they're all eating bonbons right now. This is awesome.
Yeah, and you at home may not be able to hear us chew, but you probably will be able to hear us lick our fingers.
Yeah. Great.
Awesome. Let's do a quick round of so far experience here at SP Fest.
Well, I'm here doing a workshop and 3 sessions, and then also this. I'm actually also announcing officially right now that I would be joining Microsoft as of September 4th.
Hold on. Could you repeat that a little bit closer to the microphone? Liz Sundet is?
Joining Microsoft September 4th.
That's awesome. And you are joining Microsoft in such a great role where you, as people will find out by the end of this episode, the kinds of things that you offer to the community and to other people. But the role within Microsoft, PFE, stands for Premier Field Engineer.
Premier Field
You get to be the fixer, the problem solver, and usually it's post-sales.
Yes.
When people are using it,
Yes.
adopting it, and maybe they hit a roadblock or two.
Yes, and also doing change management and all those kinds of things that I've done in the past, and looking forward to it.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
But in addition to the great community that's here behind us, there's also a great community that Microsoft has internally. We dog food this stuff. We use our own inner loop and outer loop tools to be able to help you tap into that and also help you contribute to it. So it's going to be great.
Thank you.
Yeah, so
Thank
if you don't know anybody on day one, I can at least say you know 3 people.
I know a couple people on day one, yes.
Cool. Well, again, congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome, Liz. It's
Thanks.
wonderful to have you on board.
Looking forward to it.
Dan, and then we'll go to Chris. Dan, what have you been doing since we've been here?
Well, I was lucky enough to do the keynote address this morning to set off the event hopefully on a good foot with an overview of what we're doing in Microsoft 365 and SharePoint. And it's been really exciting to see so many attendees from all over the country and even from abroad. Where these events tended to be fairly regional in the past, they've clearly graduated to be significant and to draw people from all over the country. So we've got dozens and dozens of great vendors here in the expo hall behind us and many hundreds of excited attendees.
What's up for you for the rest of the event, just real quick?
For the rest of the event, I am here to cheer you guys on.
Oh, yeah.
I am done.
Wait a minute, you're going to be sitting in our sessions?
I might be.
Pressure. Chris, I know you've been busy. You had a little bit of a pre-day workshop.
Yeah, we did a pre-day workshop on content services. And I also did a pre-day workshop yesterday on SharePoint business apps, Power Apps, Flow, and all the goodness that comes from there with Michelle Caldwell from Avanade.
Excellent.
An ECM breakout today. I have a Biz Apps breakout tomorrow, and we'll I'm going to help MC the closing session on Friday. We do with Microsoft. Ask me anything. But kind of building on what you said, Dan, we've been at this event for a couple of years, and it's great to see kind of the resurgence of the community. There's definitely more attendees. The expo hall is busier, and I had the same experience. Like a few years ago, you do the obligatory, hey, who's here from out of town? You get a scattering of hands, and I'd say 80% of the people in our sessions are from outside of the area.
So we had the speaker dinner last night. It was really great to reconnect with a lot of people from the community, obviously, that are here to speak and hear about what their plans are and hear about things that aren't SharePoint. So that was fun to catch up with everybody. And of course, doing this podcast today, and then I will be doing an intranet session later today, right after the podcast, that will focus on how to get started and the reality of you're never finished. So that'll be fun. So Dan, we want to start to dive into sort of what you shared in your keynote, but really to frame like kind of what's new in the SharePoint, Yammer, OneDrive, Stream world. Start us off just a bit. What was sort of the kickoff to the keynote for people that weren't here, getting the benefit of what you shared?
Yeah, I think the kickoff to the keynote was really that what we're here to celebrate is not just SharePoint, it's all of Microsoft 365. Now that we have a set of integrated experiences in the cloud, we can really look at how they work together to drive value. And we talked about scenarios from file collaboration to working together as a team to connecting the organization and engaging employees. And we were really able to see how these best-of-class products really come together in a way that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
Nice.
SharePoint powers content collaboration in the modern workplace and in Microsoft 365 by being at the center of a lot of your experiences. If you're collaborating on documents in Office, you're sharing content in Teams and Outlook, you're on your mobile device getting to your files with OneDrive, you're engaging people with Yammer and Stream, with communities of practice, for example, or you're building digital experiences with your intranet, your portals, or even mixed reality experiences with SharePoint Spaces. SharePoint powers all of that. And SharePoint interacts with the graph to power AI experiences. It makes sure your content is secure, and it gives you a platform to customize Microsoft 365, whether you're an end user using Power Apps and Flow, or whether you're a developer working with the SharePoint framework. So SharePoint's really at the center of a lot of what you do in Microsoft 365. And for those of you who are coming to Office 365 with a lot of experience in SharePoint on premises, there's one important thing to understand, and that is on premises, the only place you could take advantage of the power of SharePoint was in SharePoint. It was a server product, it was a silo, just like Exchange and everything else. The biggest change in the cloud is that the powers of each of those server products are now intertwined. We create a tapestry of experiences where you will get the power of SharePoint in Teams, in Yammer, in Word, in PowerPoint, and Excel. You don't have to do it all in SharePoint. And that freedom unlocks a number of capabilities.
Based on people's reactions in Twitter and talking to people just even today, later in the day after your keynote, that I think they're getting it. I think they're believing in it and hopefully agreeing with it. But I heard that it went over really well and that people really liked what they saw.
Great, thanks.
One thing I'll ask you is, I know you have a background similar to mine, like joining Microsoft from a tradition of doing a lot of IT architecture work, supporting both on-premises and cloud, but mostly SharePoint.
Yep.
And now that you're in a much larger realm, where, again, you're expected to have the magic pill for answering, minute detail questions about Outlook or Teams or other things, how do you stay current on what we're doing kind of across M365?
That's a good question. I think the answer is I've got a great team. My team really does a great job of, our team does a great job of keeping each other in the loop of what's happening across our products. And I think at Microsoft we do a decent job of using our own capabilities to communicate what's going on around the organization. It's not easy, and I certainly feel a lot more removed from the minute details of the technology. But the good news is, unlike before when I was an MVP, I actually do know who to call if there's an answer, if there's a question that I can't answer.
Well, you said one of our buzzwords for today's podcast, so you get another chocolate. Buzzword was loop.
Loop.
So you mentioned loop, and you referenced the inner loop. Walk us through the inner loop, outer loop, and some of how that's either helping you talk about it or certainly helping people understand what's going on and how they can use different tools across their teams, across their organization.
Sure, this is a really common conversation that we're having with customers and with the community at events like this. It centers around the concept that we have a very powerful suite of tools. There's more than one, And whenever there's more than one tool, people wonder which one they should use. And I always go back to the story of when I first started teaching technology training, and this was a time when what people were trying to learn was Lotus 1-2-3 and WordPerfect. So for those who don't know, who are listening, Lotus 1-2-3 was before Excel, and WordPerfect was before Word. And the question that they had was, which tool win? Why shouldn't I be typing the company memos in Lotus 1-2-3? I can type in this spreadsheet. The question is as old as technology, as old as tools really. And we're lucky in a way that we have a set of tools that cover a spectrum of scenarios rather than leaving gaps. But it leads to the question of where do I start in certain types of scenarios. So one of the ways we discuss this and frame this with customers is with a set of phrases that Satya introduced last summer, which is the inner loop and the outer loop. And even he said this summer at an event, the open loop. And what that means is when I'm working with a team on a project, when we work as the SharePoint, OneDrive, and Yammer and Stream teams, we are working on deliverables. The conversation moves very quickly. It's focused on what we're trying to achieve. And it's really great to have all of the tools we need right in line with the conversation, as opposed to having to jump to a bunch of different tools. And Microsoft Teams gives us exactly that. It gives us a hub for teamwork where our conversation, our tools, our content, our effort can all be in one place. And that's very productive for that type of teamwork. But in today's organizations, almost every employee, 91% the data say, work outside of their core teams from time to time. They need to draw on the broader expertise of the organization. They need to understand the vision and the strategy of the organization, sort of the top-down news and vision. And they need to connect with each other and create a sense of belonging. And those kinds of activities that go across teams are what we call the outer loop. It's people you work with across the organization. And then, of course, there's the way you manage your own time and tasks and conversations, which we do in Outlook. And you can almost think of that as your own inner loop or your own core loop or private loop, whatever you want to call it. But there are very, very different ways of working. You can imagine if every conversation was available to everyone in the organization, you would be getting noise from teams that don't mean anything and don't add value to your day. And so being able to really focus on certain conversations in your inner loop, being able to tap into expertise and knowledge in your outer loop is a really powerful way of approaching today's workplace.
So, that's definitely helpful about talking about the individual value in inner loop and outer loop. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, from the organization perspective, some of those outer loop technologies really give an opportunity for, Satya, our CEO, can have a connection with me even though I'm not sure he would recognize me if he crossed me on campus. So how are we using outer loop technologies to help forge some of those abilities for CEO and corporate leaders to engage that broader loop?
Yeah, that's a great question because as Microsoft demonstrates, it's more important than ever to connect leaders with employees. Employees need to have an understanding of what the vision and the strategy of the organization is. They need to understand how the organization thinks and what the culture is in order to make fast and informed decisions. And at Microsoft, to your point, Satya and his leadership team have used Yammer particularly well to scale cultural change, to communicate to 110,000 employees around the world, and not just communicate at them, but communicate with them. One of the great things about Yammer is the fact that it engages people in a two-way dialogue. And we see that at Microsoft where we have a Yammer group where anyone can come and ask questions of the senior leadership. And I don't think there are many organizations on the planet of our size where someone like you or me would feel comfortable just emailing a bunch of the senior leadership to find out, what our position is on a particular issue like data privacy or security of the electoral process. But in a culture that we've created, supported by Yammer, anyone can go in and ask those questions. There's a sense of openness and transparency. And the leaders, likewise, can connect authentically and share their vision and hear directly from the rest of us what's going on. I had an interesting customer story I'll share with you real quick, which was with one of our very large customers. The CEO literally told me, it's like, I don't want to hear what my senior leadership tells me everyone is saying. I want to hear it directly. I want to tap directly into the conversation and have my fingers on the pulse of the organization.
I got to ask before you start drinking the Kool-Aid, from a external perspective, how is the loop analogy helping people?
The loop analogy, really starts to play into really understanding what are all of the tools that you have available and the explanation of how it fits into the organization and how MVPs can use that just as a starting point to explain all of the different technologies that are out there and then really tap into what is the use cases that fit into those different technologies and how are we going to use those to add value to the organization.
Awesome. Well, I think one loop that we haven't talked about, I don't know if it gets a name, maybe it's the Hyperloop or something, but I think next topic, this might be the loop-de-loop. The next topic, though, is to talk in terms of what are you sharing around AI, and maybe that gets us into mixed reality and some of the fun stuff we've recently announced. Talk about what are some of the importances of how we're baking in AI and the benefits to end users.
Yeah, AI is clearly where we're investing. It's a huge area of investment for us, and we see it pop up in big and small ways. So in some of the bigger ways, we've got now the ability to process video and transcribe it and translate it into multiple languages so that video can now be the new document. If you have a recording of a meeting, you can capture everything that was said, you can search for it, which will eventually give us the ability to protect it with DLP and to ensure that content in that is compliant. So that's one very big way in Office 365. And also in small ways, I love the fact that when I make a travel reservation and the hotel sends me a confirmation email, Cortana kicks in and adds it to my calendar automatically. It just sees that that's what I'm doing. Or when I'm interested in learning more about someone who's going to be in a meeting that I'm attending, our people cards, our hover cards, our people cards show up and allow me to find out what that person's doing, what they're working on, and to learn a little bit more about that person. So it brings information to my fingertips and gets us away from a metaphor where all search is just about finding a list of possible results and turns it into a scenario where search gives us answers and actions. And in some cases, we don't even have to search. The information just pops up right when we need it.
You made me think it's like a subtle tap on the shoulder. You never really go, I'm going to go log into the AI portal.
Nope.
You actually get a lot of things powered by that are just little hints and nudges and like, I didn't even realize that was something I probably would have gone to look for, but there it is already.
Yeah, totally.
In the context of where I'm at, in the app or experience that I'm already in.
One thing on that, I love that we get the reminders if we're about to meet with someone from outside the company, so long as we have connected LinkedIn. It says, hey, would you like to see the profile of the person you're about to meet in 15 minutes?
Why, yes, I would.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. That's great insight, and it also just helps us be more productive. I can use an example where Chris and I were in a meeting last week, and I needed to find the slide deck that Chris shared, and rather than having to remember what it was called, which I had no idea, I could simply look at his people card and find what he'd been working on recently, and because I knew I had access to the slide deck, I was able to find it right away. Great slide deck, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I was going to say, how'd that end up for you? So in that same realm, we certainly have been doing some interesting things with some mixed reality. And I'm curious not only what you might have talked about in the keynote this morning or what you've been talking about when people are asking, but where are we at with SharePoint Spaces and just that understanding of what does that add to the toolkit of what people can do with SharePoint Office 365?
Yeah, SharePoint Spaces is a really exciting new capability. As you mentioned, we announced it at the SharePoint conference. People have been working with content in 2 dimensions since the beginning of time and technology. But in many ways, we need to be able to process information from a new perspective. We need to be able to dive in and dissect and interact with information in a much more tangible way, especially in scenarios where you have big data that you're trying to understand. But also, whenever you're trying to learn something, to really be immersed is much more engaging and compelling than just scrolling around a page. So I'm really excited about what SharePoint Spaces is going to offer regarding learning. And now Mark's taking a picture of me, so that's why I'm laughing, because I have coconut in my teeth, thanks to Liz, and Mark's here taking a picture of me, so I'll smile. That'll be on the page.
Coconut is closer to tooth color.
Yeah, that's right.
Peanut butter is a little more embarrassing.
That was supposed to be a subtle photo.
I know, I'm sorry, I just couldn't stop laughing. But SharePoint Spaces is really going to allow anyone to create really compelling immersive experiences with the content they already have on their intranet. It requires no unique content, although obviously it lights up when you have 3D content and 360-degree video, but it doesn't require that. You can build these spaces out of any content you have on your intranet. And you don't need any special skills either. It's as easy to create in a SharePoint space is as easy as creating a page in SharePoint. You click the plus, you pick your web part, you pick the content you want to show. And mixed reality has been so expensive and inaccessible to organizations that it just hasn't really caught fire in a broad way yet. And I truly think that SharePoint is democratizing mixed reality. It's mainstreaming it in a way that's going to allow anyone to create mixed reality experiences. And so where we're at is we announced the technology very, very, very early at the SharePoint conference. We gave people a super early peek. There will be more at Ignite. We'll show off some other, we'll show the next steps. And we are working very closely with a small group of customers right now to really capture core scenarios and make sure that the technology is as usable and as functional as it possibly can be. So people should definitely join us if you're coming to Ignite. Join us online to see the stream or the recording if you're not. And stay on top of this because it's a super exciting technology.
And we'll put links in the show notes for people who can go check out the preview and certainly learn more about how they can get involved with everything we do at Ignite.
Awesome.
I know you mentioned Ignite, but there's lots of other events that are going on around the country, around the world, and like many of us, you travel to your fair share of those.
Yep.
What are some of the things that you've been noticing going on in the community over the past year?
Well, clearly the community as a whole and our customer base as well has embraced the fact that SharePoint truly is back with a ton of mojo. As you all know, we were all there 2.5 years ago when we did the Future of SharePoint event. It seems it's amazing it's only 2.5 years, but we've come such a long way. We've delivered everything we promised to deliver. We've innovated, we've modernized just about everything people knew about SharePoint, and now we're at the point where we're truly innovating. We're delivering things that you've never had in SharePoint. Things like SharePoint Spaces, organizational news, and we're going to have more to share at Ignite and over this coming year. So people are excited about SharePoint, they're stoked about the innovation, they're trying to wrap their heads around what to tackle first to deliver the most value for their organizations. And the thing I'm probably most proud about is our super passionate community. People who have a lot of expertise and experience in the technology are looking around the rest of the suite now, and they're truly embracing Teams, Yammer, Stream, OneDrive, the list goes on. And that's really important because very few people buy SharePoint on its own. They buy it as part of a suite. So I'm really excited to see that events like SharePoint Fest are really SharePoint in name only, and they are embracing the broader desire to transform digitally and to drive a lot of value with Microsoft 365.
I would just reflect two things I've already observed this week here at the conference. First is I ran into someone who is newer to the community, who is a first-time organizer of SharePoint Saturday Kansas City. We'll give the pump. It's coming up on October 13th. And also, if you remember a few years ago, the numbers of partners that we had I think, plateaued. And when we look around the expo hall today, there's a number of partners who just weren't here 5 years ago. We're really back to being a dynamic ecosystem with new entrants coming in, brand new companies who have never exhibited before. We're never delivering solutions until 2 years ago. And it really makes me proud to be part of this community.
Definitely, and partners are moving up the value chain too, right? It used to be very much about plumbing, and now those partners are doing great stuff and are evolving. And to your point, I'm seeing partners here that are delivering solutions that never would have been possible before. And I've seen a few tools that I want us to start using as a team already. There's some great stuff here.
Really?
I've seen in the last couple of years, even since Future of SharePoint 2.5 years ago, the level of transparency from the product team, you guys, to the community has been a phenomenal focused effort. And I think we all are reaping the benefits from having a little bit more open communications. What is Microsoft doing? All of that. And I thank you for that.
Dan, just to kind of wrap up, we want to understand your journey about 2.5 years ago, 3 almost. When you joined, you drank the Kool-Aid. Now you're making the Kool-Aid. But what you did before that and how you got there. And I'd love to start with you, just to understand, before you get to Microsoft, some of the things you've been doing in the SharePoint community for years. But Dan, give us your
so my journey, as I mentioned, started off doing technical training on Lotus 1.2.3 and WordPerfect. Very quickly caught the wave of Windows Server and Client.
Now, where were you doing that at the time?
All over the country.
Okay.
I was based out of Denver and then Phoenix. But traveled all over the country, and it caught this wave that just allowed me to work with the best companies on the planet. And by 2000 was helping organizations build Active Directory, deploy Windows and Office, and managed, as you guys know, to find my way into the best gig in IT, which was supporting the Microsoft technology stack for NBC Olympics, for whom I got to do 6 different Olympic games. And towards the end of that time, was lucky enough to work with much of the community on IT Unity, a public website for SharePoint and Office. And then I saw what was happening at Microsoft. I saw the effect that Satya and his leadership team were having on the culture of the company. I saw the transparency that Liz referred to. I saw the innovation that was just about to break with SharePoint. And I just knew that was the next wave I wanted to catch, to use a surfing metaphor. And so I joined the company just 2.5 years ago, a month before the Future of SharePoint event, jumped right into the fire, and it has delivered everything I hoped it would deliver. A world-class team. I'm just grateful every single day for the people I get to work with and the products I get to work on. So it's been a really phenomenal opportunity, and anyone who's looking to build a great career in technology should definitely look at Microsoft. I think it's a place where you come to do good for yourself, but you really come to allow others to do great things.
That's great. That is a nice journey. So, Liz, you've already shared your big news.
Yes.
Which means you are in the phase of being pre-Microsoft. Before we get into nitty-gritty of the inner workings of your brain, tell us what you did before you got here. How do people know of you in the community? What do you offer your customers, partners, all that?
So in the community, I do mostly speaking. I do a little bit of blogging. Very active as far as a promotion of women in SharePoint as well, and working with Kathy and Lori and Jennifer and all those wonderful, wonderful women to be able to promote that as well. But I think what I looked for in a community like the SharePoint community was, the whole sense of being open to everyone else's ideas, and the fact that I may know a little piece of something, but I don't know everything. And, being able to rely on other people to support each other and have information of each other. The military uses a term called esprit de corps, and it's one of those things where it's the morale of the group, but it's really that spirit of working together and that spirit of moving forward and helping everyone move forward. And so that's what I look for in a community, and I think that's a lot based on my music background and having that connection with other people and wanting to connect with other people, and that's what I found in the SharePoint community, and I feel so blessed that there is such that rich community.
Maybe now that I understand, there's a new acronym that you've just created. Your PFE is going to be Pre-Decor Field Engineer.
Decor.
I'm all for it.
One thing I wanted to ask you about is, if you think back a few years ago, during one of SharePoint's earlier upticks, there was, knowing that you focus on adoption, 5 years ago there was a tremendous number of governance and adoption sessions, because when you get runaway usage, you get afraid of, people get fearful, and how do we implore more governance? And if there's too much governance, people aren't using the system. How do we get to adoption? But I do think that's kind of healthy. How do you see the balance of governance and adoption working here in 2018?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the landscape has changed because the technology has changed. So allowing users to do a little bit more with the technology because the tools are a lot easier, I think that has helped. They don't have to be so reliant on, setting up servers and all those types of things. They can, kind of support the business in a different way. And setting up pages and a communication site, making announcements, those types of things, a lot easier than it was, back in the early days of SharePoint.
Sure.
So I think the governance has to be a little bit more open and open to allowing users to be a little bit more innovative and a little bit more experimental with some, hey, we got to protect the business type of controls as well. So
how, I think we get that, but we definitely know there's reluctance to be that forward-looking, leaning into the technology like that. How do you respond when, I'm sure in the course of your consulting, course of your advising customers, how do you respond to organizations that say, we're fearful about empowering our users and engaging them that much?
And I have that exact scenario right now,
okay,
because I work as a adjunct professor for a college university, and they've shut off my access to being able to spin up a new Teams site, for instance. And some of that is, hey, we don't want anybody or everybody doing those kinds of things. But a lot of it's training your users and applying good change management policies throughout the organization, being open to people wanting to learn and grow with the technology, and providing just kind of a basic level set of what I would consider just knowledge around computer systems. And if you can do that and yet allow people to innovate, because I think really that's where you see the user adoption really taking place, is when people start innovating with the technology. So.
All right, so this next round, now that we're feeling well governed and well adopted, we want to tap into what you're actually speaking with here.
Yeah.
So you've got great titles, by the way, for your sessions. First one we want to tap into is, the places you will go in SharePoint. So Dr. Liz Seuss,
yes,
what do you tell people?
Well, the session is based on tips and tricks, and unfortunately I'm actually retiring that session, or I need to completely rewrite that session.
The sessions you might not go to anymore.
Simply because a lot of it's based on 2013, some Office 365, but I'm surprised there's a lot of people that are still on 2013 that are at this conference as well, and a few others that are, still on 2007, 2010. But some of the things that we talk about is some of the tips and tricks or things that people don't know. One of the attendees of my session today, when I asked at the end of the session, he said, I didn't know the difference between major and minor versioning. And I said, well, how long have you been working with SharePoint? He said, 5 years. And today he learned what the difference was between major and minor versioning, and that when you turn on minor versioning, you get all of the minor versions for the last major versions. So he really liked that clarification of things. So that was one of my big wins for the day, I guess.
So it's a tips and tricks session.
Yes.
It's a how to get through maybe what's getting blocked and what you didn't know.
Yes.
Okay, next session, SharePoint Superhero, the SharePoint Business Analyst.
Yes.
So I know that you cover mind mapping and prototyping. First, can we talk about the session, and what is a SharePoint Business Analyst now in 2018?
So I've been filling the role of a business analyst long before I was doing SharePoint.
Okay.
And I was actually probably filling the role of a business analyst long before I even started doing technology. And so it's really that facilitator between the business and whatever the solution might be. And it might be a process rework or, process re-engineering. It might be, finding a solution on a number of different technologies. It might be reorganizing, who reports to who within the organization. It can be any of those different types of things, but it's really, I'm the liaison between the business and whatever technology or whatever that solution might be, to figure out what are the business needs, what's plaguing the business, and then figuring out what the solution might be.
Years ago, when I had a consulting practice, we had kind of classic IT pro infrastructure architects. We had developer purists, and then in SharePoint, we emerged everyone else. These are people who are solving customer problems, without installing a server or writing a line of code.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a great description of what a business analyst might do. Yes.
So last session, make your intranet go from good to great. It's close to my heart. I love the title. Tell us what you share in that, and then we're going to dig into your profile. Don't get too scared. That's what's coming next.
Okay, so making your intranet go from good to great. I've seen many companies that put up an intranet. They spend lots and lots of money putting up this intranet, and then their content remains stagnant. Old pictures, benefits information, and it's, the following year before they re-up their benefits information, all of those types of things. It's a matter of what is kind of your governance around keeping up the content, making sure that you have somebody that owns the content, and it shouldn't necessarily be IT. It should be IT that helps support those people, but somebody in the business, such as communications or HR, that can really run with, keeping that content up to date and making sure that the information's not stagnant.
So information that somebody puts up there but maybe doesn't change a lot is good. Dynamic content that's relevant and personalized, great.
Or using a flow to bring in content, or using an RSS feed to publish content onto your intranet that you never have to do anything with. So those types of things.
So let's put SharePoint aside for a second and dive into actually a little bit about Liz and her personal side, because you share a little bit in your profile, so that's where I'm stealing this from. But I gotta know, you play music, what instrument?
I play a lot of instruments. I have a music degree. I've played piano since I was 6. I started trumpet when I was in 6th grade, moved to French horn when I was a freshman in high school. And because of my background playing piano, they asked me to play the pit percussion in marching bands, so the timpanis, the xylophones, the marimbas, all of that type of stuff, and that's what I ended up majoring in college.
So I think it's SharePoint Conference 2019. I'm thinking we know who the band for the special night is.
Right.
Oh, all of you.
All of me.
So in musical instruments floating around, there's some music that maybe is of a different type, or vroom vroom type music. Motorcycles.
Motorcycles,
really?
yes.
Yep. Any good crash stories?
Sort of. My husband picked up a traffic cone in a parking lot and went to stop after he put the traffic cone down and skidded on some sand and kind of just, dumped the bike a little bit. We both fell off, all that kind of stuff. Laughed about it, got up and rode away.
Made some chocolate, you're fine.
Yeah, it was all good. So
right. I know you're retiring the session name, but I wanted to come back to it one more time. So for the places that you've gone with SharePoint,
yes.
Where's home and where's an interesting place that SharePoint has taken you?
So Holme is about 60 miles south of Minneapolis and about 30 miles north of Iowa.
Okay.
So out in the middle of nowhere, very rural. I actually live very close to Rochester, Minnesota, so Mayo Clinic.
Mm-hmm.
And SharePoint has taken me to all sorts of cities that I feel very wonderfully benefited from. I visited actually Portland, so my 49th state, Portland, Oregon.
Oh, that one.
And on Saturday, I will be flying to Boston and heading up to Portland, Maine for my 50th state. So,
fantastic.
yes.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Tick and tie that one up.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
pre-Microsoft.
Yeah, a lot of that was pre-Microsoft.
I mean, your last one is going to be, and then now I can join Microsoft.
Yes.
I've done my 50.
Yes.
Marimbas, motorcycles, Microsoft in Minnesota. I like the alliteration.
That's the 4M, not the 3M company, right?
Next section, we'll kind of do this one because when we always have interesting people, they are subject matter experts of the things that they do. And of course, at events like this, you're going to get a lot of questions. Think of something that's relevant. Think of something that you always feel like you have a good answer that people maybe don't know about or are confused about. And not to throw anybody under the bus to go first, but Chris.
But me. How can I use Flow to automate getting new pages approved? And one of the things I was able to showcase this week is you have for months been able to use Flow to custom build a process, and we still support that. But we are now rolling out a capability that we call page management that allows people to build a new page, structure it with metadata and parts, use it as a de facto template for making new ones, and allow people to contribute those freely, because you can automatically set up a flow to require check-in and sending it to someone for approval, so that lots of people can create while still balancing the right level of control, that just the right content gets pushed out as news or as pages.
Awesome. So who's going under the bus with Chris next? Liz.
Okay, so one of the questions that I got asked at SPCNA was, how do I use Teams within my organization? Like, what's the most common use case? And how do I get started using that? My answer to that was, find a scenario that works for you. And for me, it was, hey, I've got all these projects that I'm working on, and all of these projects have separate teams. So let's set up a team for each one of the projects that I'm working with, and being able to set up different channels for maybe, different Scrum, Agile, sprints that are going on at that particular time, and all of the requirements and all of the communication stuff that's in those particular sprints. So that was kind of my answer for how to get started with Teams.
Sounds like you're using Teams to get a little bit more organized.
I am, yes.
So the wheels on this bus go round and round, and under that bus, Dan must go.
I think one of the questions I get asked a lot these days is whether teams should work together on a team site or in Microsoft Teams, because we use the word Teams in many places. And I think the answer, luckily today, is you don't have to make any compromises. This was one of the things in my keynote, in fact, which is we on the SharePoint team are bringing all the power of SharePoint into Teams. Over the next couple of months, we'll have a first-class experience for files, libraries, lists, pages, news, custom solutions, custom applications, so that you have the opportunity to work completely inside of Teams and have the full power of SharePoint. And similarly, we're bringing much of the power of Teams into the intranet as well, and we'll have some fun announcements and demos of that at Ignite.
A nice little teaser within the FAQ.
It's time to figure out where the bus is going next, and I could look to our audience. I see Kim Frey, Avanade, consultant, world traveler. Come on over.
Oh, awesome.
Come join us. What's a question that you get asked regularly?
Actually, it's the same one with Teams. How do we use Teams?
Yep.
And it's for getting organized and being able to communicate with our teams. Especially, I work with a lot of overseas teams, so it's great to be able to have that seemingly real-time collaboration using Teams with our offshore teams.
Awesome. Thanks, Kim.
Thanks for letting us put you on the spot. It's one of the nice things about being able to take the intrazone out on the road and run things live.
Yeah, we could have it be
And
the
so-
intrazone, the
and now-
outrazone, inner loop, outer loop. What do you think?
And now we're going to run the bus over you, my friend
Yeah,
Mark.
I was thinking with the bus analogy. I'm going to
Yes.
pretend that I'm Keanu Reeves.
That's great. Just answer the question.
Okay. So we just published some information about some new things that are rolling out. And one of the things that seemed to cause a little confusion, but it was a common question I got more than twice, so I'm going to share it as a question and answer, was with all the web part and adjustments that you're doing to web parts, can I only do that at hub sites, on hub sites? And it's possibly how I wrote it, so I'll have to recheck on that. But it is a common question. Can I use the web parts in all places of my intranet? And so the answer is absolutely yes. None of our web parts are reserved for any particular site type. So hub sites, communication sites, team sites, pages, news, home pages, you got it, whatever. You can use the web parts pretty much in all places in the modern intranet that we promote through SharePoint and Office 365, with one small little caveat. Some of them do special things when they are part of the hub site homepage. Like the news will roll up news from all sites that have been associated to it. And some things that we're working on that we'll share a little bit more at Ignite that do that similar roll-up pattern. So if I use that same web part on another page, it's just the news of that site. But for the news of the hub or other things that you might think in terms of rolling up, there are going to be that little nuances. But for the answer to the question, you use the web parts where they make sense, whether it's a team site, communication site, hub site, pages, news, all good. This is a quiet bus. I
You
think
get
bus
a web
just
part
stopped.
gallery. You get a web part gallery. You get a web part
Yeah,
gallery.
and especially if people build their own custom web parts, there's no limit in how you build your part to where people then can use it. You can dictate where people can use it, but for the most part, they're just web parts on pages.
And you can bring those pages into Teams.
Hey,
Use them to tell a rich
think
about-
story inside of Teams.
Think about almost creating like a mini dashboard in a
Totally.
SharePoint page and then having it in the context of the conversation.
I want to read this question exactly as we wrote it in the outline. Dan, where can people best keep up with all things Holme?
follow me on Twitter at Dan Holme.
That's very homely of you. And Liz, where can people follow up on all your hashtag not Tracy activity?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Percussion, Percusn. And
now we know why.
Exactly. And I also blog for Women in SharePoint, so you can find me on there as well.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely put those links so people can follow you guys, learn a little bit more about what you're doing. I do have to ask just one last question. Not Tracy.
Not
How
Tracy.
often does that actually come across?
More than you would think.
And explain just a little bit for everybody listening.
So last year at Ignite, Tracy Vanderschiff, my good friend from South Africa, was ready to get on stage. She was a little, just kind of, mulling around, and I think she had gone to the bathroom or something, and somebody came up to me. I was actually holding her sheep ram, and they came up to me and they said, "Tracy, it's great to meet you." And I said, "I'm not Tracy."
You didn't try to pull off the South African accent?
No, not at all. I said, "Tracy's actually getting ready to speak. She's doing her tech check right now." And he was like, "Oh, gosh, you guys look a lot alike." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, we're kind of, sisters from another mister kind of thing." And then the same thing happened when I was in Utah, and somebody came up to me and said, "Hi, Tracy." And I was like, "I'm not Tracy." And so the hashtag kind of became a thing. And when we were at Summit last year, we both wore kind of the different colored crazy pants, and we had people going, "Did you go home and change? Or what was going on?" But because they'd see the different of us, or they'd see us together and go, "Oh, okay, I wasn't seeing double or single."
From a distance, the sheep for me is the differentiator.
Yeah.
Who's got the sheep?
Well, hopefully Tracy will be bringing Bram a girlfriend that I will be carrying around soon.
Oh, you're going to make it harder for everybody. I love it.
Yes.
Well, Dan and Liz, and certainly Chris, we thank you for being here. We know you both have busy schedules. Hopefully this was a fun way to spend an hour. But thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of the SP Fest and do all that great stuff you do in the community.
Thank you guys so much for having us.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
We encourage you to send us your question for the SharePoint teams. You can reach us via email at theintrozone@microsoft.com or via Twitter @mcashman and @cmcnulty2000.
You'll be able to find all the links to everything that we discussed today in our show notes on the podcast page. Go to aka.ms/theintrozone. Thanks so much for listening. We're your hosts, Mark Cashman and Chris McNulty. This has been The Intrazone, a show about the SharePoint Intelligent Intranet.
Okay, it's official. We are very much in the final sprint to Election Day. And face it, between debates, polling releases, even court appearances, it can feel exhausting, even impossible to keep up with. I'm Brad Milkey. I'm the host of Start Here, the daily podcast from ABC News. And every morning, my team and I get you caught up on the day's news in a quick, straightforward way that's easy to understand, with just enough context so you can listen, get it, and go on with your day. So, kickstart your morning. Start smart with Start Here and ABC News, because staying informed shouldn't feel overwhelming.